Hey guys, tonight we're going on a sleepy stroll into a world of cold stairwells, lukewarm porridge, and the distant hum of Soviet propaganda radio. That's right, you're about to live a day in the Soviet Union. You wake up to the scent of cabbage, mildew, and damp newspapers. Outside the frosted window, the city still slumbers under a quilt of gray sky and concrete. You sit up slowly on a creaky cot in a two-room Khrushchevka apartment, built fast and cheap in the 1960s, with walls so thin you can hear your neighbor clearing his throat, and maybe even what he had for dinner. There's no central heating, not really. The radiators make a sound like they're thinking about working, but they mostly don't. You sleep in long johns and socks, curled like a cinnamon roll under a blanket so heavy it could pin a small animal. You rub your eyes, pull the curtains aside, and watch your breath fog the window. Your alarm didn't ring because you don't have one. You've trained yourself to wake up to the sound of the neighbor's radio announcing the weather and today's hero worker. Spoiler alert, it's never you. The apartment is shared by 3 generations: your parents, your grandma, your baby cousin, and the family cat, Comrade Pushkin, who has somehow figured out how to open the fridge when no one's looking. The cat eats better than most people. You shuffle to the kitchen in your slippers. It's less a kitchen, more a broom closet with a hot plate. The wallpaper is peeling in a charming pattern of sunflowers and despair. Grandma's already making kasha, which she swears builds character. The tea is weak, like your will to go outside. You spoon in homemade jam to pretend it's sweet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Pop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lace up your thick felt Valenki boots and step into the stairwell. No elevator, of course, just 5 flights of cracked steps and a babushka on the second floor who monitors all hallway activity like a Soviet version of Batman. You nod politely. She squints. You're not sure she's ever blinked. Outside, the cold slaps you like an unpaid electric bill. You trudge down streets lined with identical apartment blocks, like the city was designed using a single gray Lego. The air smells faintly of coal, snow, and hopelessness, or maybe that's just the public transport. You squeeze onto a packed bus where strangers avoid eye contact like it's contagious. Everyone clutches their bag to their chest, not out of fear, but because it's just what you do. Your bag, by the way, contains a reusable jar in case you find someone selling milk. It's glass and weighs a metric ton. As you ride, a loudspeaker on the bus announces the glory of the 5-year plan, while an old woman mutters under her breath about how the 5-year plan has lasted for 15. Historians still argue whether most citizens truly believed in the system or just learned to act like they did to get by. You finally arrive at your workplace, a cement office building with the architectural charm of a filing cabinet. Inside, portraits of Lenin and Brezhnev look down at you from every wall like omnipresent socialist dads. Your job? Something vaguely bureaucratic involving papers, stamps, and forms that may or may not have a purpose. You settle into your desk. The furniture is made of wood that appears allergic to comfort. Your office mate, Yuri, tells the same joke every morning. Another glorious day in the worker's paradise. You both fake a chuckle and sip tea from mugs that still have dried lipstick from last week. Mid-morning, someone brings in a tray of sweet buns to celebrate a co-worker's cousin winning a chess tournament. Any excuse, really. You grab one before they vanish, which takes about 7 seconds. Soviet pastries are notoriously dense, but you convince yourself this one tastes like victory. At noon, you head to the canteen. Lunch is soup, dark rye bread, and a meat patty of mysterious origin. It's hot and edible, so you count yourself lucky. The canteen plays music, usually patriotic ballads about tractors and sacrifice. There's a rumor someone once requested a Beatles song and vanished the next day. Joke. Probably. Back at your desk, the heat has turned on, sort of. It now smells faintly of burning socks. You shuffle paperwork and pretend to type important things. Productivity isn't exactly encouraged. It's more about appearing busy and never complaining. Outside, the city is a parade of brown overcoats, fur hats, and endless queues. People line up for whatever's available, sometimes not even knowing what's at the front. You once stood in line for an hour and came home with only a single banana. It was green, hard as a rock, and you named it Boris. He lived on your windowsill for a week before you ate him ceremonially. At 5 p.m. sharp, the building empties like someone pulled a fire alarm. You ride the bus home, half asleep, elbow to elbow with other silent commuters. A man near the back plays a quiet tune on a worn accordion. It's oddly beautiful, in a melancholic, frostbitten way. Home again. Grandma has made borscht, and you eat it with sour cream and stale bread. The TV plays a documentary about steel production. You try not to laugh when the narrator says, "Our great nation has no shortages," as your stomach growls for something more substantial. Later, you head to the communal bathroom for a shower. It works. Sometimes. Tonight, the water is lukewarm and smells like rust and regret. You scrub quickly while someone knocks impatiently. One towel for the whole family. You make it work. You crawl back into bed. Your little brother asks if you can tell him a bedtime story. You make one up about a brave boy who smuggled chewing gum from Finland and became a national hero. He falls asleep, smiling. You stare at the ceiling. Outside, the city hums, a mixture of old engines, clanking pipes, and distant dog barks. The red flags flutter in the wind like they're trying to remember why they were put up in the first place. And you close your eyes, knowing tomorrow will look exactly the same. But hey, at least the radiators might work. You wake up groggy, and the first thing you feel is your nose. Cold. It's always your nose. It sticks out from under the blanket like an unapproved political opinion. Vulnerable and alone. The radiator made a few hopeful clicks last night, but ultimately gave up, much like the guy 2 floors down who tried to start a jazz band. The family's already moving. Grandma clinks around the kitchen muttering about potatoes. Your father hums a song about tractors and sacrifice. No one knows where he learned it, but it's catchy in a depressing way. You grab your coat. It smells like soup. Everything smells like soup. Today's mission, the queue. There is no question if you'll queue, only what for, and you don't actually know yet. You step out into a world permanently locked in late autumn, even though the calendar insists it's spring. The sky is an old Soviet documentary, gray, static, unchanging. You walk past a small knot of people, huddled together like pigeons around a street corner. There's no sign, no vendor, no announcement. But there is a line. You join it automatically. No one speaks. You don't ask what it's for. That's not how the game is played. This is the sacred choreography of the Soviet queue, a dance of trust, suspicion, and silent hope. Eventually someone whispers, "They say it's oranges." Someone else says, "I heard women's shoes." A third shrugs. "Could be bicycle tires." You stand there for 40 minutes. Your feet go numb. Someone tries to cut in line. An old woman hisses at him with the fury of 1,000 winters. He backs off. There's an unspoken code here, enforced with glares sharper than Siberian wind. A babushka behind you taps your shoulder and asks, "You're behind me, yes?" You nod. She says, "Good. I'm number 37. Don't forget." You write it on your hand. This is not a drill. Queues are serious business. Missing your place can cause a minor riot. Historians still argue whether this system was spontaneous grassroots order or a symptom of collective desperation. Suddenly, a truck pulls up. A crowd surges. It's canned fish, not even the good kind. But it doesn't matter. It's something. You buy your 2 allotted tins, one of which is slightly dented and smells like the sea dyed. You feel victorious. You might even call your cousin to brag. Walking home, you pass another line. You consider joining, but remember you left the shopping bag at home. Rookie mistake. Plastic bags are precious. Washed, folded, reused, sometimes patched like heirlooms. Back in the apartment, your mother is thrilled. "Canned fish. We'll eat like kings tonight," she says, placing the tins beside a pile of dusty jars filled with pickled vegetables from 2 summers ago. You don't mention the dent. Better to live dangerously. You eat lunch, beet salad, black bread, and a boiled egg that may have known Lenin personally. You have tea made from something called Ivan chai, which tastes like sadness and dandelions, but it's warm, and it's yours. After lunch, your neighbor knocks. "I heard they have winter coats at the department store. Want to come?" You pause. Winter coats in April? Sure, why not? The store is a relic of socialist planning. Half-empty shelves, grumpy clerks, and mannequins that look like they're plotting revolution. You see a coat. It's brown, itchy, and one sleeve is longer than the other. Perfect. You try it on. It smells faintly of mold and mothballs, which is actually a selling point. You line up to pay. It takes an hour. The cashier moves with the urgency of a snail on sedatives. You hand over your ration card and some rubles. Transaction complete. As you leave, you glance back. The coat rack is already empty. Your neighbor wasn't so lucky. "Maybe next time," he says with a shrug. You nod solemnly. You've bonded over polyester misery. Back home, your little brother is excited. "Can we go to the store tomorrow, too?" You laugh. Poor kid thinks shopping is an adventure. You don't tell him that one day he'll dream about standing in line for toilet paper. And yes, there is a shortage of that, too. You reuse newspapers, pages from old textbooks, or whatever isn't nailed down. Pravda has never been so useful. At night, you dream of exotic luxuries. Chewing gum, real bananas, chocolate that doesn't taste like chalk. Your cousin once got a Snickers bar from a sailor. He cried while eating it. Said it was like kissing the West. You think about writing to a pen pal abroad. You've heard of a boy in East Germany who traded stamps with a kid in Canada, but you hesitate. Letters can be opened. Questions can be asked. Still, You tuck a little hope away, like a lucky coin or a warm memory of real butter. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, though it never really shines, you'll wake up again to the dance of the queue. You'll scan the streets for silent crowds. You'll learn to read the language of murmurs, elbows, and hopeful plastic bags. It's absurd. It's exhausting. And it's your life. School smells like wet boots, chalk dust, and a faint trace of boiled cabbage that somehow follows you from home. You shuffle down the hallway with a dozen other kids in identical uniforms, gray tunics, stiff collars, and thick socks that itch like ideological doubt. You're in the 4th grade now, which means you're old enough to memorize Marxist slogans, but still young enough to lose your mitten in the toilet. Your classroom is boxy and cold. The windows sweat from inside, fogging over as your classmates breathe and fidget. The walls are bare except for a large portrait of Lenin above the blackboard, his stern face overseeing everything like a judgmental uncle who never blinks. You sit at your wooden desk, scarred with carved initials, dried ink, and possibly someone's tears, and pull out your exercise book. The cover says, "For the Glory of Labor." Inside is math, spelling, and an occasional drawing of a cow with 5 legs. Your teacher is named Galina Ivanovna. She wears a wool skirt, thick glasses, and a look of exhausted patriotism. She begins the day the same way she always does. "Children, who do we thank for the sunrise?" And in unison, the class answers, "The party." You chant this so automatically that you once said it in your sleep during a class nap. Lessons begin with dictation. Today's passage is from a speech by Brezhnev about tractor production. It has nothing to do with spelling, but it's in the textbook, so you write it anyway. Each word slowly, carefully, because the ink freezes if you write too fast. Your pen leaks. You wipe it on your sleeve. Galina Ivanovna sighs but doesn't punish you. She knows. Everyone's pen leaks. You move on to math, today's problem. If Comrade Ivan digs a trench 300 meters long and Comrade Petrov helps him with 5-year plan enthusiasm, how many socialist shovels will it take to reach collective success? You guess 4. She writes a red check mark and moves on. There's a break after the first 2 periods. The school provides something called compote, a lukewarm fruit drink served in cloudy glasses. The flavor changes based on the mystery fruit available that week. This time, it tastes like prune and maybe pencil shavings. Recess is outdoors, regardless of temperature. You wrap your scarf around your head and stomp into the snow with your classmates. You make snowballs and pretend they're grenades. You reenact battles from World War II, because that's the only history you really learn. Historians still argue whether this focus on war and heroism was meant to instill pride or to distract from the food cues. Inside again, you study moral and political education. It's less about right and wrong and more about loyalty. The textbook explains that a good Soviet child respects elders, reports suspicious behavior, and never dreams of blue jeans. You raise your hand and ask if you can draw a poster for the hallway. Galina Ivanovna smiles. "Of course," she says, "make one that shows a smiling worker giving his lunch to a collective farm." You nod. Later, you draw him wearing mittens and a suspiciously Canadian-looking hat. Then it's music class. There's a piano, but the teacher only knows 3 songs: the national anthem, a song about cosmonauts, and something involving sheep and tractors. You choose the cosmonaut song mostly because you like pretending to float. After school, you're expected to stay for after-class ideological reinforcement. This sounds intimidating, but it's basically a youth group. You sit in a circle, wear a red scarf, and practice saluting. You repeat things like, "We are the future. We are the builders of communism," with all the enthusiasm of a sleepy turtle. You're part of the young pioneers now, which makes you feel proud and slightly confused. You were inducted in a big ceremony last year where someone pinned a red scarf around your neck and called you the hope of the motherland. You didn't understand it fully, but your mom cried, so it must have been important. The pioneer activities are weirdly fun. You do community service, picking up trash, delivering groceries to pensioners, or painting fences that probably didn't need painting. Once a month, you take part in a big rally with banners and shouting. You get a badge for that. You collect the badges. You have no idea what they mean. One of your friends, Olya, whispers that her cousin listens to music from America, something called rock and roll. You ask what it sounds like, and she says, like someone who isn't afraid. You think about that for the rest of the day. Back home, you do your homework while your parents read the newspaper. There's only one paper, and it reads like a bedtime story for adults who still believe in tractors. Your dad underlines an article about factory quotas. "Look," he says, "production is up 12%. You nod, not entirely sure what that means. Your mother rolls her eyes. You practice handwriting for an hour, because good penmanship shows good character. You write, "Glory to the heroes of the harvest," 15 times in increasingly crooked lines. Your ink runs out. You use a pencil. The lead breaks. Your little brother asks you to help him draw Lenin. You make the nose too big. He shrugs and says, "Looks like Grandpa." You both laugh for a full minute. Quietly, of course. As the day ends, you polish your school shoes with a slice of bread. Not because it works well, but because that's what everyone does. You place your uniform carefully over the radiator in hopes it will be warm tomorrow. In bed, you think about cosmonauts, badges, and the mystery of Western music. You wonder what kind of place has enough chocolate for candy bars, enough fabric for blue jeans, and enough courage to sing about it. But mostly, you wonder what tomorrow's compote flavor will be. The hallway smells like boiled cabbage and nail polish remover again. You're not sure which of your 10 neighbors is responsible, but you suspect it's a joint effort. This is communal living, communalka, and it's less a lifestyle and more of a survival experiment. Your apartment isn't just yours. It's shared with 3 other families, each with their own tiny room and a collection of mismatched dishes, rusted pots, and complaints. The kitchen is common ground, neutral territory in theory, but in practice, a Cold War in miniature. You tiptoe into the kitchen, holding your enamel mug and a spoon like you're entering a battlefield. Someone's already there. It's Tatiana from room 3. She's standing guard over a pot of soup like it's state property. She eyes you as you approach the stove. You nod. She nods. The tension is thick enough to stir. There's 1 gas stove, 4 burners, 3 families, 8 adults, 2 kids, 1 cat, and not enough matches. You light the stove with the kind of focus usually reserved for bomb disposal. It hisses, then catches. Small victory. You add water to a pot. It's for tea. It always starts with tea. Tea fixes everything, including existential dread. You glance at the fridge. It's padlocked. Everyone has their own shelf. Labels, warnings, notes written in all caps. Do not touch. This is not your sour cream. You once took a spoonful of the wrong jam and were given the silent treatment by room 2 for a week. Historians still argue whether Soviet communal life built social unity or just excellent passive-aggressive coping mechanisms. You wait patiently for the water to boil. Behind you, someone coughs. It's Yevgeny from room 1. He coughs a lot. He enters in his bathrobe and slippers, opens the cabinet with a dramatic sigh, and rummages for bread. There's none. He sighs again, louder this time, hoping someone will ask what's wrong. No one does. The toilet is down the hall. You try not to think about it too much. It's functional. It flushes when it feels like it. The light bulb is out again. Someone says it's your turn to replace it. You say you replaced it last time. They say, prove it. You shower in shifts. Technically, there's a schedule taped to the wall next to the door. Handwritten, water-stained, and ignored. If you want hot water, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. or be really charming to the plumber's nephew who lives in room 4. Once a week, someone does laundry. Not all the laundry, just the lucky few garments that make it into the wash basin. There's no washing machine. You soak, you scrub, you rinse in cold water while your fingers turn into raisins. Then you hang your clothes over every available surface, chairs, doors, radiators, and occasionally your brother. There's one phone. It lives in the hallway like a pet no one wants. It rings maybe once a day, and everyone silently prays it's not for them. When it is for you, you have exactly 3 minutes before someone taps their watch. Privacy doesn't exist. Sound travels like gossip in a small town. You hear arguments through the walls, husbands and wives, mothers and sons, even the occasional one-sided conversation with the cat. You've learned to sleep through it. Mostly. One time, your dad tried to hang a curtain for privacy. The hook broke, and he cursed so creatively even the walls blushed. You eat dinner in your shared room. Tonight, it's potatoes and mushrooms. Maybe a pickle. Your mom adds a dollop of sour cream and calls it a celebration. You eat sitting on the edge of the fold-out sofa, balancing your plate on your knees. There's a tiny TV in the corner. It shows a concert, state-approved pop music with singers wearing sequins and singing about steel mills. Your little brother dances. Your dad rolls his eyes. Your grandma hums along. In the corner of the room, the samovar steams quietly. It's old, dented, and probably a fire hazard, but it makes decent tea and holds more memories than furniture should. Later in the evening, the hallway fills with murmurs. The water's off again. Someone is banging on pipes with a wrench. Someone else is blaming the Americans. You smile to yourself. It's always the Americans. In your shared room, you find a quiet moment to read. You're halfway through a borrowed copy of Master and Margarita, illegally photocopied, pages slightly crooked, but precious beyond measure. You read under your blanket with a flashlight. Every page feels dangerous, thrilling, alive. Outside, you hear someone playing a guitar softly, probably Sergei from room 2. He only knows 4 chords, but plays them with such longing, it's almost poetic. Your mom irons your school uniform on the bed while your dad patches a hole in his winter coat. Your little brother draws with a blue crayon on a napkin. Your grandma sharpens knives for no reason. She says it's relaxing. You all coexist in a space meant for two people at best, and yet, somehow, it works. Imperfectly, irritatingly, occasionally, beautifully. A fringe Soviet sociologist once described communalka as a forced collective dream inside a broken alarm clock. You think that's pretty accurate. Before bed, you step into the hallway and brush your teeth over the sink with a mysterious drip. The mirror is cracked. You see your reflection split into pieces, yet still whole. Back in the room, the fold-out couch squeaks as you climb in. Your little brother snores. The TV mutters in the background. Outside, someone drops a pot. A dog barks. Pipes clank. And despite it all, the noise, the crowd, the chaos, you sleep. Because this is home. You're 11, and they've just tied a red scarf around your neck so tight it almost feels like a promise. You stand in a dusty school auditorium next to 30 other kids, all blinking toward the overhead light like confused deer. The principal clears his throat and announces with great ceremony, "You are now pioneers, the pride of Soviet youth." You don't feel particularly proud. Mostly itchy. The red neckerchief marks your official induction into the Young Pioneers, the state-run youth organization that's equal parts scouting troop and ideological training camp. It's supposed to shape you into the perfect future citizen, disciplined, loyal, and able to fold a tent, recite Lenin's birth date, and salute with a rigid arm that could slice cabbage. Your family applauds quietly from the back. Grandma cries. Your dad smirks. Your mom takes a blurry picture with a camera that makes a wheezing sound. After the ceremony, your class files out into the hallway for juice and dry cookies shaped like stars. Everyone's trying not to eat their cookie too fast. You pretend you're saving it for later, but really, you're just trying to chew it without cracking a tooth. The next day, you're handed your Pioneer Handbook. It's red, of course, with a gold star embossed on the front and a list of official rules inside. Things like, a pioneer is always honest and brave, and a pioneer loves labor and protects socialist property. There's no rule about don't steal from the collective garden, but you'll learn that one the hard way. Your first pioneer assignment? Parade practice. Yes, practice for parading. You line up outside the school and march in rows under the supervision of a gym teacher who takes her whistle duties very seriously. Left foot, right foot, swing your arms just so. Smile, but not too much. Be proud, but not too proud. This is still the Soviet Union. You chant slogans. Lenin lived, Lenin lives, Lenin will live. You don't really know what that means, but it echoes nicely off the brick wall. On weekends, you attend pioneer meetings in the school's multi-purpose room. The chairs are hard and the air smells like floor wax. You listen to speeches about the virtues of hard work, the glory of the October Revolution, and the dangers of Western decadence. Mostly burgers and jazz, apparently. Your group leader is Anton, a university student with the posture of someone who believes deeply in filing cabinets. He tells you stories about heroic Soviet children who turned in their traitorous parents for saying the wrong thing at dinner. You're not sure whether to be impressed or terrified. You go on field trips to monuments, statues of soldiers, plaques with names, eternal flames. You stand in line and lay flowers. You sing a song about sacrifice. You wonder why all the heroes are so serious and none of them are allowed to smile. Still, not everything is so grim. There are campfires and sing-alongs and games in the forest. You learn how to tie knots, build birdhouses, and climb trees, as long as it's approved by the camp supervisor. One time, you even won a badge for civic engagement, though all you did was help carry folding chairs. Historians still argue whether pioneer camps were genuine community builders or just cleverly disguised indoctrination centers with surprisingly good goulash. One summer, you go to Artek, the crown jewel of pioneer camps in Crimea. It's where the best kids go, those with perfect grades, sparkling uniforms, and a letter of recommendation from a local party official. You got in because your teacher likes your handwriting. Artek is paradise by Soviet standards. Clean dorms, actual toilet paper, volleyball courts, 3 meals a day, and kids from all over the USSR. You trade badges with a girl from Latvia and try to impress a boy from Uzbekistan by claiming your uncle once met Gagarin. He pretends to believe you. Every morning, you raise the flag as a group while a loudspeaker plays a brass version of the anthem. You sing with everyone else, half asleep, eyes full of Crimean sunlight and dreams of second servings at lunch. You participate in the Pioneer Olympics, a competition involving sprints, quiz bowls, banner making, and an event where you have to recite quotes from Lenin while holding a watermelon. You don't win, but you get a certificate that says you showed revolutionary enthusiasm. It now hangs crooked on your wall at home. Back in your hometown, pioneer life blends into school life. You collect scrap metal for recycling drives, sweep the sidewalk in front of the library, and plant trees in the park while pretending not to notice that half of them die within a week. You also write letters to Soviet soldiers. You use your best cursive and draw smiley faces in the margins. One soldier writes back, thanking you for your touching sentiments and excellent use of metaphors. You don't know what a metaphor is yet, but you beam with pride. One afternoon, your group is told you'll be meeting an actual veteran. He's old, wears more medals than fabric, and smells like shoe polish and ghost stories. He tells you about marching through Berlin, losing his best friend in a tank explosion, and carrying a goat across a frozen river. You don't understand half of it, but you clap the loudest when he finishes. Some kids take it all very seriously. They memorize the pioneer oath, polish their badges, salute in the mirror. Others, like you, drift through with a mix of boredom, curiosity, and the occasional flash of pride when the group wins a banner competition. Still, there's something in the structure, the ritual, the collective rhythm that sticks with you, the shared scarves, the songs you all know by heart, the feeling that even in this chaotic, cold, cramped life, you're part of something bigger, even if it doesn't always make sense. Even if sometimes you just want to wear jeans and listen to music that isn't about steel production. You fall asleep that night with your red scarf draped over a chair and your guide to pioneer conduct under your pillow. You dream of sunshine over the Black Sea, the sound of marching feet on gravel, and a world where maybe, just maybe, you don't have to salute every time you enter a room. You're older now, maybe 13, maybe 15, old enough that they stop patting your head and start asking questions like, what are you going to contribute to the glorious future of the motherland? Which is a lot of pressure for someone who just learned how to boil an egg. You've officially entered the world of Soviet work culture. Not that you're clocking in at the steel mill just yet, but the whispers are beginning. Your teachers, your neighbors, your uncle with the permanently raised eyebrow, they all want to know where you'll fit in. Factory? Farm? Office with a plant in the corner and a stamp with your name on it? But before any of that, there's the internship. Yes, internship. Except here, it's called productive labor, and it's mandatory. Every teenager gets assigned a job in the summer on a collective farm, a textile warehouse, or, if you're really lucky, the post office, where the most dangerous thing is a paper cut. Your assignment? Canning factory, lucky you. So now you spend your mornings inside a warehouse that smells like pickled everything. Beets, cucumbers, onions, and something no one can identify but keeps appearing in jars. The supervisor is a chain-smoking woman named Raisa, who calls everyone sweetheart and can seal 20 jars a minute while arguing about Leninism. You wear a white smock that used to be white 3 summers ago. You try not to gag when the vinegar hits your nose. Your main job is sticking labels on jars and pretending you don't see the occasional fingernail floating in the brine. You get paid. Sort of. It's enough for a ticket to the movies and maybe a scoop of ice cream if there's any left. You go with your friends and spend the entire film trying to decode whether the soldier in the movie is secretly in love with the tractor mechanic. Back at home, your parents both work full-time. Your mom's an engineer. Your dad manages logistics for a furniture factory. They leave before sunrise and return after sunset, usually clutching their backs and muttering about someone named Galena, who always takes the last of the good pencils. Your dad's job mostly involves moving paper from one desk to another and making sure the phone doesn't ring. He's got a whole drawer filled with blank forms he'll never fill out. Still, he wears his badge with pride and tells you the secret to surviving the Soviet workplace. Look busy, always, especially when you're not. He's not kidding. At work, there's a golden rule. Doing too much gets you noticed, and getting noticed gets you trouble. So you learn to pace yourself, not too slow, not too fast, just enough to float. Your mom, on the other hand, is the opposite. She works like she's personally responsible for keeping the entire city warm through winter. She carries blueprints, corrects her boss, and once built a working model of a hydroelectric turbine out of matchsticks for the office exhibition. She won second prize. The first prize went to the director's niece, who made a papier-mâché linen bust with googly eyes. There's a wall at her job covered in headshots of the workers of the month. Your mom is up there 3 times, next to a guy with a unibrow who once rewired the break room radio using chewing gum and divine intervention. At dinner, they talk about work like it's a chess game. Today, I made the boss think it was his idea to fix the schedule. Galena left the electric kettle on again. The copier is haunted. Just typical worker banter. Your older cousin tells you a secret. There are people at his office who get paid to do nothing. Literally, they just show up, sit there, and collect their salary. One guy reads poetry all day. Another plays solitaire with a deck that's missing the 6 of spades. They're not slackers. They're survivors. Historians still argue whether this culture of pretending to work was a silent protest or just everyone collectively agreeing to do the bare minimum together. And then there's the slogans. Everywhere you go, work is surrounded by words in red and gold. Labor is the pride of the people. We will fulfill the 5-year plan in 3. Work, comrades, for the glory of socialism. You stop noticing them after a while, like wallpaper that yells at you. Sometimes a bigwig from the party visits your parents' workplace. Suddenly, the floors are polished, the tea is upgraded, and the employees wear their nicest frowns. Your dad once spent an entire week preparing a report that no one read because the visiting official got distracted by a pigeon on the windowsill. You hear about Subotniks, mandatory volunteer Saturdays where workers choose to clean, paint, or build things for the community. You rake leaves, paint benches, and repaint them again the following month because someone from the party thought blue looked too decadent. But it's not all cynicism. There's pride, too, especially from the older generation. Your grandfather still talks about building a dam with his bare hands and a team of 500 teenagers armed with shovels, string, and a single bulldozer that didn't work on Tuesdays. He says it with a kind of sacred reverence, like it meant something more than concrete and water, and maybe it did. You walk past factories that never close, smokestacks puffing into the sky, workers with soot-streaked faces and lunchboxes dented from decades of use. Everyone's tired, but they show up. Because if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you complain, you disappear. One night, your mom comes home with a box of chocolates, actual chocolates. She got a bonus for exemplary performance and morale. You all sit around the kitchen table and eat them slowly, piece by piece, like museum artifacts. Your little brother licks the wrapper. You think maybe, just maybe, when you grow up, you'll be a train conductor or a typist or a poet who files reports and dreams of bananas. You're not sure yet, but you know how to hold a hammer. You know how to stamp a form. And you know how to nod at slogans with just enough enthusiasm to survive another day. You're barely out of bed before the sirens start, though not the kind that scream doom. These are factory whistles, tram bells, and the distant voice of your neighbor yelling at his cat to get off the windowsill. It's morning in a Soviet city, and the whole place hums like a machine reluctantly groaning into motion. Today's plan? A little shopping, which in Soviet terms means survival tactics. Plus luck, plus emotional resilience. Your boots are tied, your ration book is in your coat pocket, and you've already promised yourself, if they have toothpaste this time, you're getting 2. The first stop is the bread line. You join it like it's a weekly reunion with strangers you somehow know too well. The babushka in front of you complains about her knees. The man behind you explains, for the 3rd time this month, why the West will collapse any day now. Someone cuts the line. The mood darkens. You wonder if this is the day someone finally throws a beat. And then the smell hits, warm, yeasty, golden. Bread, actual fresh bread. You grip your spot like a soldier defending a trench. Shopping in the Soviet Union isn't something you do. It's something you survive. There's no popping into the store on the way home, no idle browsing. You're a hunter, and the jungle is made of gray concrete and suspicious store clerks. Inside the grocery store, the shelves are, well, not empty exactly, just very creative. A whole row of mustard, an end cap of pickled cabbage, and an inexplicable mountain of canned fish that expired 2 years ago, but still tastes fine if you don't sniff it. You clutch your ration coupons like gold. Each little square is a promise from the state. You may be allowed to buy this item if it exists, and if the cashier likes your face today. You try to butcher. There's a man in a white coat waving a cleaver around like he's conducting a symphony. The meat is behind glass, but only technically. It's just bones and fat. You point hopefully. He sighs, scoops something into a paper parcel, and mutters, "For soup only." Historians still argue whether these shortages were due to centralized planning failures or a result of poor logistics, multiplied by even poorer incentives. Some say the Soviet system never figured out how to move things, even when it made them. Quirky detail. Somewhere in Leningrad, there was an entire warehouse full of left-footed boots, just the left ones. Thousands of them. No one knows why. No one fixed it. Anyway, back to your hunt. You head to the Univermag, a Soviet department store. The name suggests wonder. The inside suggests concrete, blinking lights, and the soul of a soggy sponge. You're looking for soap, not the fancy kind, just regular non-sandpaper soap. The shelves hold a few mysterious bricks in unlabeled paper. One smells like pine. One smells like regret. You buy both, just in case. Next, clothes. Your trousers are turning into something historians might call an archival textile. But the only pants available are 3 sizes too large and the color of boiled turnips. You buy them anyway. Alterations can be made, or you'll just gain weight. The system provides. There's a line forming outside the shop across the street. No one knows what they're selling, but the rule is simple. If there's a line, join it. It might be toilet paper or imported oranges, or a single radio that only plays the national anthem. Doesn't matter. You'll wait. You once spent 2 hours in a line that turned out to be for shoe polish. You didn't even own leather shoes. But sometimes the gods of commerce smile on you. You hear a whisper, chocolates at the kiosk near the bus station. You bolt, elbow past a babushka, gently. Wave your rubles like a torch. And yes, there they are, wrapped in shiny foil like treasure from another dimension. Imported, sweet, probably smuggled. You buy 5. A nearby vendor opens her coat to reveal pantyhose, actual Western pantyhose. It's like witnessing a black market miracle. The price is triple the normal rate. You hesitate. She raises an eyebrow. You buy 1 pair, not because you need them, but because your neighbor Tanya will cry with envy. Barter is an unofficial currency. Got matches? Trade for shampoo? Coffee beans? Worth their weight in secrets. Western jeans? You could buy a used motorcycle or a date with a bored customs officer. Your apartment kitchen reflects the system perfectly. Mismatched jars, reused plastic bags, half a cabbage, and a single banana hoarded for a holiday. The fridge hums like it's dying of boredom. You cook with what you have, which is often beets, potatoes, and the eternal mystery meat known only as cutlet. Dinner is an act of invention. You mash, you fry, you pretend the ketchup is tomato sauce, you sprinkle dill like it's fairy dust. Everything tastes vaguely the same, but you pretend otherwise. Meanwhile, the party publishes cheerful articles about abundant Soviet produce. You stare at a photograph of a smiling woman holding 20 bell peppers. You've never seen 20 bell peppers in your life. Maybe the photo was taken on another planet. Still, life goes on. You sew your own clothes, you save every rubber band, and you wash plastic bags to reuse them. Not because you're eco-conscious, because there aren't more. Your grandma has a drawer full of them folded like origami. They're more valuable than her porcelain figurines. Some days you dream of Western stores, the catalogs, the commercials, the shelves bursting with choices. So much choice it makes your head spin, but then you remind yourself, at least here you don't waste. You don't throw out, you make do. You innovate. Your friend's dad once made a fully functional toaster using parts from a radio, a coat hanger, and sheer willpower. It burns the bread unevenly, but hey, who needs consistency? And then there are the kiosks. Tiny booths on street corners selling everything and nothing. Newspapers, gum, lighters, maybe a comb. The vendors are often half asleep or reading a novel. You ask for matches. She shrugs. Come back next week. You go home, pockets lighter, bags heavier. You didn't get everything, but you got something. And in this economy, that counts as a win. You slip off your boots, hang up your coat, cut into the bread you waited an hour for. It's still warm, still soft. You tear off a piece, smear it with margarine, and chew slowly. The lights flicker. The faucet groans. You hear someone playing an accordion 3 floors below. You think, maybe tomorrow they'll have soap again, or coffee, or miracle oranges, or maybe not. But today, you got the bread. The next morning, your stomach growls a little less. You've got bread, maybe even a sliver of sugar saved somewhere in the cupboard, hidden behind the tea tin. You stretch. The sun peeks through the smudged window, filtered by 2 layers of frost and a curtain made from an old tablecloth. Outside, the world is painted in beige and gray. It's a color palette best described as melancholy realism. It's time to go to work. You throw on your coat, a heavy wool number handed down from your uncle. It's 3 sizes too big and smells faintly of gasoline and pickled herring. You wrap a scarf around your face, not for style, but because the air stings like betrayal. Your office is 5 tram stops away. The tram, as always, is an experience. You board through the rear door, squeezed between a man carrying a frozen chicken like a briefcase and a woman transporting a sack of potatoes with the determination of a marathon runner. There are no smiles, just collective silence and an unspoken code of grudging cooperation. No pushing, just leaning. Everyone leans on each other, on the system, on the hope that this particular tram won't break down like last Tuesday's. There's no heat, of course, but the body warmth of 30 strangers wedged together like canned sardines makes up for it. You spot a child in the corner, blinking slowly, wrapped like a burrito. You envy his cocoon. When you reach the office, a concrete cube that could double as a fallout shelter, you're greeted by a coat rack, a dusty linen bust, and a kettle that takes 40 minutes to boil water. Your job title is something like Junior Assistant Deputy Planner. What do you actually do? Hard to say. Some days you push paper from one desk to another. Other days you sit in a meeting about a meeting. Sometimes you organize files that no one reads. But you are part of the plan, and the plan is sacred, even if no one quite remembers what the plan was. There's a joke circulating lately. We pretend to work, and they pretend to pay us. It's funny because it's true. Your salary is technically enough to live on, if by live we mean exist in a controlled state of mild dissatisfaction. You don't do it for the money. You do it because it's what people do, and because not working raises too many questions. You sip tea, barely tea, really, hot water with a hint of leaf. Your coworker, Mikhail, lights a cigarette, even though it's not allowed indoors. No one stops him. He offers you one. You decline. He shrugs and starts reading the sports page from Pravda. The headline reads, "Victory is certain." No one is sure what the victory is anymore. Then comes the party meeting. Once a month, your department gathers in the break room while a man with a mustache and a voice like boiled cabbage reads from a red folder. He reminds everyone of the 5-year plan, the importance of vigilance, and the evil seduction of Western rock music. You nod. Everyone nods. The nodding is half ritual, half survival instinct. You sneak a glance at the bulletin board. There's a poster of a smiling tractor driver with the slogan, "Work harder, comrade. The future depends on you." You wonder if the tractor driver knows you haven't touched a tractor since 1978. At lunch, the canteen offers its usual selection: borscht, boiled potatoes, and mystery stew. You take the potatoes. You've learned not to ask what's in the stew. Tanya says it once moved on its own. She might be joking. You hope she's joking. You sit with your co-workers and discuss your true passions: weather, elevator malfunctions, and rumors about the new director who might, or might not, be the nephew of someone important. You debate whether he'll improve the coffee situation. No one dares hope too much. Outside, a man is shoveling snow with a bent piece of metal attached to a stick. He's been at it for an hour. The snow seems unimpressed. After work, you stop by the local Dom Kulturi, the House of Culture. There's a film screening tonight, a black and white Soviet epic about a heroic potato farmer who exposes a capitalist spy ring. You've seen it 3 times. You go again. The seats are wooden and cold. The sound crackles like old vinyl. But you get to sit, to be still, to feel part of something, even if it's just collective nostalgia for a world that never quite existed. Back home, you turn on the television. 1 channel, 2 hours of programming. A newsreader with ironed hair and a voice like a metronome tells you that grain production is up 400%. You think about the breadline. You don't question the math. Then, the children's choir sings a patriotic anthem in matching uniforms, followed by a puppet show about proper hygiene. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because the puppets seem more self-aware than the officials. At night, your neighbor plays the balalaika through the thin walls. Someone on the floor above you yells at their dog. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling where a crack has begun to resemble Lenin's profile. You think about your cousin in Hungary. She wrote a letter recently, says things are different there. More Western, more color. You wonder what she means. You drift off imagining a world with oranges that don't taste like desperation. You dream of choice. You dream of heat. You dream of a supermarket where the shelves are always full and no one is yelling about cabbage. But most of all, you dream of waking up to a morning where nothing is missing. You wake to the smell of cabbage. Again, not because you're cooking any, but because your neighbor 3 floors down is, and the scent has traveled upward, snuck through cracks in the pipes, and now hangs like a fog in your tiny apartment. Your first thought isn't about food, though. It's about the knock. That knock. The one you've heard in hushed stories, told between bites of dry bread or whispered while huddled under stairwells. 3 soft knocks, a pause, and then 2 more. You've never heard it before in real life. Until now. You freeze. It's early. Still dark out. A neighbor's child coughs. Pipes hiss. The wind nudges the window pane. Then silence. You wait a full minute, 2, Nothing. It was probably just someone's drunk uncle visiting at the wrong hour, right? Right? Still, you go about your morning differently now. A bit slower, a little more cautious. You don't draw the curtains all the way. You double-check your bookshelf, the one with the safe titles out front, just in case anyone drops by. You tuck that tattered poetry book from a banned émigré author deeper into the drawer. Because in the Soviet Union, privacy is theoretical. Your walls might be thin, but the social surveillance is even thicker. Someone is always watching, or more accurately, listening. Your building's superintendent? A war veteran with more medals than fingers? Yeah, he's on the party's good side. So is the lady who runs the newspaper kiosk. She's always so curious. You read foreign authors, yes? She asked last month, eyebrows raised like antennae. You laughed. Of course not. She didn't laugh. So you watch what you say, especially at work, especially around people who smile a little too often. Because while everyone jokes about the KGB, no one really wants to test whether that joke about Brezhnev's eyebrows will land you in a labor camp. Here's where things get interesting, because your neighbor, Sergei, doesn't care. He blasts the Beatles from his smuggled record player every Saturday night. He once told a party official that the speeches at the May Day parade gave him a headache. Somehow, he's still here. Historians still argue whether certain citizens got away with dissent because they were protected, ignored, or just incredibly lucky. Some say there were files on everyone updated weekly. Others claim the bureaucracy was so clogged it couldn't keep up with the actual troublemakers. What you do know is that Sergei walks a dangerous line, and he enjoys it. One night, he invites you over. Just a quiet hangout, he says. You bring a loaf of bread. He supplies black market vodka, probably made from potatoes that once dreamed of becoming soup. You listen to bootleg tapes of Pink Floyd, smuggled in from East Germany. The sound warbles like a haunted radio. But it's good, really good. Can you believe this? He whispers, grinning. And you do believe it. For those few moments, you're not in the Soviet Union. You're in a smoky living room with a flickering bulb and the distant echo of a guitar solo that was never supposed to reach your ears. Then there's a knock. Not that knock. Just a regular one, a neighbor angry about the noise. But still, your heart flips. Sergei lowers the volume and shrugs. Let them come. What will they do? Ask me to dance. But you don't laugh. You remember the stories. The teacher who said one wrong thing in class and was gone the next week. The uncle who made a joke about Stalin and didn't come home from his work trip. Those aren't urban legends. They're warnings, carved into everyday life. The next day, you ride the tram and catch someone reading the Gulag Archipelago, its cover hidden under a fake copy of How the Steel Was Tempered. That's the level of theater people live in, reading dissident literature like it's contraband, wrapped in irony and cardboard covers. You glance at the woman holding it. She looks tired. Everyone does. And yet, life keeps trudging. You go to a party meeting and clap at the right moments. You fill out forms in triplicate. You queue for bread, milk, shoes, dignity. You nod when someone says, everything's getting better. But late at night, in the privacy of your mind, you wonder, better for whom? There's a fringe belief, rarely spoken aloud, that the system was always meant to be watched, controlled, impossible to outwit. But others say the cracks are widening, that people are speaking up more quietly, carefully, beneath the noise of official parades and newspaper headlines. Historians still debate whether Soviet citizens truly believed in the state or simply believed in survival, whether the culture of silence was born of fear or just exhaustion. You walk home one night through a side street, passing an alley with peeling posters and graffiti that reads, "Freedom is a song they've forgotten the words to." You stop. It's probably nothing. Some teenager with a paintbrush and dreams of Paris. Still, it lingers. You pass a bookstore. There's a display of works by Maxim Gorky and Mayakovsky. Sanitized. Approved. But you notice one book tucked way at the back, its title half covered by another. We, by Yevgeny Zamyatin. Banned, officially. But somehow here, it disappears the next week. There's an odd kind of hope in that. Not the Hollywood kind, just a quiet, stubborn one, like the way wildflowers grow through concrete. You meet someone new, Alina. She's clever, quick-witted, and wears socks with tiny cats on them. You don't know where she found them. Probably from Poland. She asks, "Do you ever think about leaving?" You hesitate, because even asking that question feels loaded. "Sometimes," you say. She nods. Same. You walk with her through the city, past the Palace of Culture, past a statue of Marx missing one hand, past a poster that reads, "Stay silent, stay strong." Neither of you says much after that, but somehow that silence feels different. More like a question than a command. You're not even sure when it started, but lately everyone seems to be talking about lines. Not the metaphorical kind, the literal, elbow-to-elbow, snow-in-your-shoes kind. You spot a line, and instinct kicks in. You rush to the end of it. Doesn't matter if you know what it's for. It could be toilet paper, could be bananas, could be a pair of men's shoes, size 46, and you wear a 38. Doesn't matter. In the Soviet Union, the line knows best. You stand there, blinking against the wind, your coat too thin, your hat scratchy with age. Someone mutters that the store might open at 9. It's 6:15. A woman ahead of you crochets as she waits. A man behind you quietly plays chess with a child using buttons and bottle caps. Every so often, someone walks past and asks, "What are they selling?" Nobody really knows. But the rumor is, maybe oranges. Someone gasps. From Cuba? Everyone straightens just a little. You learn quickly that there's an entire social ecosystem built around these lines. The babushkas, who keep track of who arrived when. The teenage runners, hired by neighbors to stand in line for a few rubles. The silent alliances, the unspoken rivalries. There's even a black market for spots in line. Historians still debate whether the shortages were a natural result of central planning inefficiencies or whether they were exacerbated by corruption, hoarding, or intentional scarcity to encourage loyalty. Maybe it was all of the above. All you know is that you've waited 4 hours for a plastic bag of questionable sausages and you feel like you run a marathon through a glacier. You shuffle forward another 10 minutes, maybe 11. People start pressing closer. The door is about to open. A woman behind you clutches her bag to her chest. You hear someone hiss, "Don't push," which, of course, guarantees pushing will ensue. Then the doors creak. A man in a blue apron appears. He announces, "Today, carrots and dried fish." A wave of groans, but no one leaves. Because even that is better than nothing. You get your fish. It smells like your uncle's socks after a hike, but you cradle it like treasure. You might even share some with Sergei, if he's been behaving. Back home, your neighbor's thrilled. "We'll stew it," she chirps as if announcing a royal banquet. There's no paprika, no bay leaves, but she adds vinegar and hope, which, in the Soviet kitchen, is basically seasoning. You eat in silence, not because it's reverent, but because chewing takes effort, and dried fish is unforgiving. Still, you're grateful, because last week all you had were potatoes. Again. And before that, just sour black bread and a mysterious green jam that tasted like fear. Here's the thing. People don't stop living in scarcity. They adapt. Someone turns stale bread into cotletti. Someone else finds a way to ferment beets into something vaguely intoxicating. You trade favors for food. Help fixing a radio earns you 2 eggs. A secret bottle of Polish chocolate spread gets you a seat near the radiator during winter meetings. It's a quiet economy. No receipts, no guarantees. You visit Alina's flat one night. She's made tea. Real tea. Where, you ask, eyes wide. Friend in Georgia, she says. You sip. It's warm, sweet, miraculous. You almost cry. She doesn't laugh at you. Instead, she says, "Next week, I might get coffee." Your heart skips. From where? She grins. Don't ask, just be grateful. She teaches you how to stretch ingredients, how to slice cabbage thin enough to make soup for 5, how to use apple peels to flavor sugarless porridge. You feel like you're learning alchemy. There's a fringe theory that Soviet shortages weren't just about logistics. They were about control. That by making citizens struggle for the basics, you left them too tired to rebel, too distracted to question. Maybe. But as you sit on her floor, sipping tea brewed twice over the same leaves, it doesn't feel like submission. It feels like resistance, flavored with lemon peel and quiet laughter. One day, the grocery store gets an actual delivery. Not the usual half-rotten apples and suspicious meats, but tangerines. Real ones, from somewhere sunny. You get 2. You hold them like they're gold. You don't even eat them at first. You sniff them, show them to your friends. You consider drawing them in a sketchbook. Finally, one night, you peel one open slowly, reverently. The scent bursts like a firework. You bite. It tastes like childhood, like summer, like the possibility that somewhere, something is still okay. You save the second one for Alina. You don't tell her why. That week, you write a letter to your cousin in Leningrad, carefully avoiding any real detail. The censorship is too tight. But you include a sentence that makes her laugh when she reads it. The sun is rare these days, but sometimes it smells like citrus. It's code. Between the lines, she knows what you're saying. This is what life becomes. Not just enduring, but finding pockets of joy between the cracks. A sip of sweet tea, a good coat mended 3 times, a joke told softly after lights out, a forbidden magazine passed hand to hand. Historians still argue whether the Soviet people truly believed things would get better, or whether they simply hoped not to lose what little they already had. You don't know what tomorrow brings. But tonight, you and Alina eat the last of the tangerine, watching the snow collect on the windowsill. Neither of you says anything. But in the silence, you both understand. You are still here. And sometimes, in this strange, cold, rationed world, that's the loudest victory there is. You wake to the hum of the radiator, a blessed, hissing kind of lullaby that only works when it's actually on, which, let's be honest, isn't guaranteed. The cold still leaks through the window frame like an uninvited guest. You curl deeper into your blanket, nose to knees, like a Soviet cinnamon roll. It's Monday. That means school or work, or maybe standing in another line. But first, you wash your face using water from the communal tap. If you're lucky, it's warm. If not, your cheekbones will be awake long before your brain. Getting dressed is a process, layered, strategic. 2 pairs of socks, the good sweater, a coat that smells vaguely like pickled cabbage. It's fine. Everyone smells like something. Today, you've got somewhere to be. The office. Now, office is a generous word. It's a government building with walls painted in the most soul-sapping shade of gray imaginable. You think the paint color might be called bureaucratic fog. You trudge up 4 flights of stairs, elevators broken again, and greet Galena at the front desk. She's been working there since the Khrushchev era and hasn't smiled since. Your job? Pushing papers. Not metaphorically, literally pushing them from one desk to another. It's all about approvals, stamps, and knowing who's on their smoke break and who's actually at their desk. There's a running joke. They pretend to pay us, and we pretend to work. Funny, but painfully true. You sip tea made from reused leaves, 3rd round still kicking, and flip through a file you don't really understand, because nobody really explains anything. The file probably needs to go to room 7B, or maybe it's room 3C, but both are locked, and the person responsible is on vacation. Has been for 3 weeks. You shrug, staple it, add it to the pile. Maybe it'll solve itself. Welcome to the Soviet workplace. Historians still debate whether the Soviet Union's notoriously sluggish bureaucracy was a bug in the system or a feature. Something designed to keep people endlessly busy, thoroughly confused, and perpetually in fear of misstepping. You can't say for sure. You just know the office clock ticks slower than nature intended. You glance around. Someone's knitting at their desk. Someone else is doing a crossword. One guy's clearly asleep, chin on chest, snoring softly. And no one says a word. Because this is survival. You show up, you sit, you look busy, you don't do too much. Doing too much might get noticed, and being noticed, that's risky. You once knew someone, Anatoly, who got too ambitious, tried to automate some paperwork, made charts, submitted suggestions. Within a month, he was transferred. Now he works in a storage facility outside Murmansk. They say the snow there never melts. So, you pace yourself. Still, every so often, there's a flicker of something more. A quiet conversation about a new book smuggled from the West. A colleague who scribbles poetry between memos. A secretary who sings old wartime songs when she thinks no one's listening. It's not all gray. One afternoon, you're asked to help organize the Subotnik, a mandatory community service day where you sweep the street, pick up trash, maybe repaint a bench. Volunteering, but not quite optional. You nod, accept the broom, and try not to inhale too much chalk dust. It's cold. Your fingers go numb through your gloves, but someone brings a samovar. There's black tea, and you huddle around the steam like moths around a candle. You swap jokes. You mock the slogans painted on the walls. One reads, "Work is honor." You mutter, "If that's true, I must be a national treasure." People laugh, quietly. Then there's the meetings. Oh, the meetings. Long, droning affairs full of words like collective responsibility, production quotas, and ideological correctness. You nod along, clap at the right parts, and never, ever ask questions. Your job is to appear engaged, not to actually be engaged. There's always a portrait of Lenin watching from above. Sometimes it's Stalin, occasionally Marx. You start to wonder what they'd think of this room filled with tired people pretending to care. At lunch, you file into the canteen, trays in hand. The food is edible. Soup with floating mystery particles, overcooked buckwheat, a cutlet that looks suspiciously like it came from a food mold. Still, it's hot, and hot matters. You sit by the window, spoon in hand, watching the snow. Across the table, Irina shows you a black and white photo of her grandson. He's got huge ears and a crooked smile. You smile back. It's the best moment of your day. Here's the thing. Even in this gray maze of bureaucracy, people carve out space for humanity. They help each other navigate broken typewriters and missing forms. They trade advice on how to get heating fixed faster. They memorize each other's birthdays. Someone leaves a chocolate under your blotter, just one, wrapped in faded foil. You don't know who, but it matters. There's a fringe belief in some circles that the Soviet office culture actually trained people for endurance sports. Not physically, but mentally. Waiting, enduring, navigating mazes of rules without losing your mind. If that's true, you're basically an Olympian. At the end of the day, you clock out with a metal punch card. You walk home through slush, your boots soaked by the third block. A gust of wind nearly steals your hat. A man sells roasted chestnuts by the metro station. They smell amazing. You buy one. That night, back in your apartment, you strip off your damp clothes, sink into the one armchair that isn't broken, and let the numbness settle in. Your toes tingle, your shoulders ache, but you're home. Sergei pokes his head in. You want to watch new Pogodi? You nod. He sets up the TV, bangs it twice to get the static to clear. The wolf chases the hare. You laugh at the same jokes you've seen 100 times. For 15 minutes, the whole gray day dissolves. Then the screen flickers and dies. Sergei groans. Again? You pat his head. Tomorrow, we fix it. Maybe. You crawl into bed, wrap yourself like a burrito, and stare at the ceiling. It wasn't a good day. But it also wasn't a bad day. And in the world of Soviet labor, that's something close to a miracle. You're dreaming of something strange. Potatoes falling from the sky, soft as pillows, each stamped with a party slogan, when the knocking starts. Not gentle knocking, authoritative knocking. It's 5:43 a.m. You shoot up. Sergei's already awake, wide-eyed under his blanket like a nervous meerkat. Your mother has that look, the one she saves for tax inspections and unexpected relatives. Another knock. You answer the door. 2 men in gray coats. You don't ask for ID. You don't need to. Everyone knows the look. KGB. Come with us, one says. It'll only take a moment. You don't argue. You throw on clothes, wrong socks, no belt, half-zipped coat. They don't say what it's about. They don't have to. Your heart is sprinting, but your feet walk slow, measured. Panic is dangerous. Panic draws attention. You pass old ladies sweeping the steps with twigs. One of them watches, says nothing, just crosses herself, down the stairs, into the car, windows fogged, the air stale with old tobacco and tension. They don't talk, neither do you. They take you not to prison, not yet. They take you to an office. That's worse in some ways. A plain room, a desk, a single lamp, a coat rack with no coats. The walls bare, no linen, no marks. Just silence. They ask you questions about work, about who you talk to, about what you read, about your neighbor, Leonid. You answer carefully, truthfully, but not too truthfully. Yes, you read Pravda. Yes, Leonid borrows it sometimes. No, you don't recall him saying anything political. No, you didn't notice if he was gone last weekend. No, you don't know what Radio-Free Europe is. They watch your hands. You fold them in your lap. They ask if you've ever joked about Brezhnev. You lie. They don't blink. They dismiss you with a nod. We may call you again. You nod back. Your legs feel like cold jelly. Outside, the air is fresher than you remembered. You're still alive, not arrested, not sent to Siberia, just brushed, because that's all it takes, one brush. You go to work like normal. No one says a word, not even Galena. But they all know you weren't there in the morning. You returned after lunch. They know. You try to work, but your hands shake when you staple. You miss the corner. The paper rips. You fix it neatly, quietly. That night, you check behind the picture frame. You burn a postcard from your cousin in East Berlin. You hide a joke book. You stare at the ceiling again, but it feels heavier now, and yet you survive. That's the game. Everyone survives until they don't. The months slide by. You adapt. You perfect the art of being invisible in plain sight. You smile when expected. You never initiate conversation. You burn old letters. You drink more tea. You watch Sergei grow taller, quieter. He starts whispering jokes with friends at school, and you want to scold him, but you don't. You just make him promise not to tell them outside, not even to his best friend, not even in the hallway. It's not paranoia. It's training. Then one day, something strange happens. The radio says something different. A new voice, a new tone. Words like glasnost, words like perestroika. You don't understand at first. You think it's a trick, a test, but it keeps happening. You see it in Pravda. You hear it on TV. People saying things you thought were unspeakable, and no one's being arrested. Yet, at the office, Galena rolls her eyes. They say we're allowed to criticize now. I told my husband I've been doing that since 1963. People laugh. Real laughter. It feels dangerous, but also good. Suddenly, people are talking again, joking, asking questions out loud. Leonid returns, says he was on assignment. You don't ask. He brings back a cassette of Queen. You listen to it once, then twice. You don't even hide it. The walls haven't collapsed, not yet. And for the first time in your life, you wonder what it might be like to live without fear, to say what you think, to make a choice, to be someone. It's not freedom yet, but it smells like spring thaw before the ice is gone. You breathe deep, and you wait. The television hums in the corner, its wooden frame more solid than half your furniture. The screen flickers with static, then steadies. And there he is, Mikhail Gorbachev, the man with the birthmark and the cautious smile. He doesn't look like a revolutionary. He looks like your uncle who smells like pickled cabbage and never finishes a sentence. But he is changing everything, or so they say. You sit on your rough sofa, tea cooling in your hand, as words like glasnost and perestroika swirl through the airwaves like spells from a language you don't quite speak. Openness, restructuring. What does that even mean? You glance at Sergei. He's old enough now to roll his eyes at politics. But he's listening. That's new. You remember a time when children were the eyes and ears of the party, when even kindergartners were praised for reporting on anti-Soviet chatter at home. You remember that subtle fear? What if Sergei had once told them something? What if a silly story had spiraled? Now he sits beside you, watching Gorbachev speak as if he's just another news anchor. You wonder how long this window will stay open. The first signs of change are subtle. In the library, suddenly, books are moved from the restricted shelves to public ones. You see Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago. You blink. You actually hold it in your hand. You check the room to see if anyone is watching. They're not. They're reading, too. In the marketplace, people mutter less. They speak a bit louder. There's an odd freedom in the way they shrug when asked about the government. Instead of silence, there are jokes. Not whispers. Actual jokes. Someone makes a crack about Brezhnev's eyebrows, and no one vanishes. Historians still argue whether glasnost was truly a gift of liberalization or a last-ditch attempt to salvage a crumbling empire. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But you feel it. For the first time in your life, you feel like the walls have ears. But they're sleeping. Still, you're careful. Caution is hard to unlearn. Then one day at work, you hear it. A complaint. An actual complaint. A co-worker files a grievance against the factory director for hoarding parts. Publicly. Not through whispers, but with paper. You wait. You expect sirens, but they never come. In the paper, an article criticizes a local official, not an abstract foreign bureaucrat. A real one, with a face, with a title. It feels like watching someone juggle lit dynamite, and yet nothing happens. Soon, the bookstores fill with once forbidden voices. Pasternak, Mandelstam, Akhmatova. You read in secret still, but your hands shake less. The fear lingers, but it fades, molecule by molecule. At work, someone puts up a small poster of an American movie, Rambo. It's torn off by security within a day, but that's a whole 24 hours longer than it would have lasted in 1978. In the kitchen, Galina mutters, "Next thing you know, we'll be wearing jeans." You already bought Sergei a pair. Black market. They cost more than a month's wages, but he grinned like he'd won the Olympics. You don't tell Galina. The black market becomes something else now. Less secret, more tolerated. You can find bananas again. Maybe not fresh, maybe not cheap, but there. Radio Free Europe used to crackle in and out like a ghost, whispering through static. Now, it's clearer. Sometimes you can even understand the whole sentence before it fades. And then, in 1989, the earth shakes. Not literally, no earthquake, but your mind does. The Berlin Wall falls. You hear about it before the official news even dares mention it. A friend of a friend in East Berlin calls someone in Moscow, who calls your cousin, who tells your neighbor, who whispers it to you over tea. By the time it's on the news, you already know. But you don't believe it. You stare at the images of hammers and fists breaking down concrete, of Westerners and Easterners hugging, dancing, drinking Coca-Cola like it's some holy relic. You feel like someone opened a window that's been painted shut for decades. You cry a little, not because of joy, not yet, because you don't know what comes next. Everything is shifting. Some changes are good. More color, more choices, Western music on the radio, real conversations in public. But it's not all bright. With freedom comes chaos. Shops run out of food again. Inflation makes your rubles feel like monopoly money. Factories lay off workers. Your friend Vasily drinks more and works less. Sergei starts talking about leaving the country, something you never even dared dream at his age. You feel proud and terrified. You're standing on the edge of a cliff you didn't even know existed. The Soviet Union is cracking, not just politically, but spiritually. For the first time in your life, the words Soviet citizen don't quite mean what they used to. In fact, they might mean nothing soon. That terrifies you more than the KGB ever did. You lie awake again, not from fear of arrest, but from the gaping unknown. You lived through silence. Now you must live through noise. But you hold on, because this, too, is survival, just a different kind. You brew tea. You feed the cat. You send Sergei off to school with a quiet "be careful" that carries more weight than ever. You keep moving, because in this strange new world where freedom and famine walk hand in hand, standing still feels like the real danger. You don't know what happens next. No one does. But for the first time in decades, that feels almost okay. You wake up to static silence. No radio anthem, no flag ceremony on the television, no Lenin quote read in monotone by a well-combed announcer. Just silence. It's December 26th, 1991, but no one tells you this day will go down in history until later. You just feel a shift. You shuffle to the kitchen. The faucet groans like a wounded animal before spitting a few drops. You put the kettle on anyway because that's what you've always done. Boil water, make tea. Keep going. You reach for your sugar tin and your fingers brush the bottom. Empty. Of course. The television finally clicks on. Not with a speech. Just the news anchor. Solemn. No dramatic music. No waving flags. Just one sentence. The Soviet Union has officially ceased to exist. Your breath catches. Your identity, Soviet citizen, just evaporated like steam from your cracked kettle. You're something else now. A Russian. Maybe. A former Soviet. A post-Soviet. No one really knows. There isn't a replacement ID card, just confusion. The red banner with hammer and sickle is lowered from the Kremlin. That part is real. That part, you see, it flutters for a moment before disappearing forever. You sit down slowly. Your knees creak like old stairs. You've heard of countries falling, of revolutions, of empires collapsing, but always in textbooks, always in black and white grainy footage, always somewhere else. Now it's you. You're the footage. The food lines don't get shorter. The prices don't drop. The slogans disappear. But so do the subsidies. Galina comes over with 3 potatoes and a worried look. "Everything will be fine," she says. You both know it won't. Not for a while. But you nod anyway. It's what you do. The neighborhood feels different. No more party posters. No more Komsomol rallies. The statue of Lenin near the school is gone. Just an empty pedestal and a few cigarette butts where pigeons now perch like historians. Historians still argue whether the collapse was inevitable or a tragic blunder of reform gone too far, too fast. Some say it was Afghanistan, Others blame the stagnant economy. Others whisper about Chernobyl. You don't care. You just need milk. But the store shelves are emptier than ever. Prices change every day. Yesterday, 3 rubles for a loaf of bread. Today, 12. Tomorrow, who knows? Inflation eats your pension alive. Sergei counts coins like a banker trying to figure out if you can afford meat this week. He's 13. He should be worrying about crushes and math homework, not exchange rates and currency speculation. He tells you about something called a voucher. The government says citizens will be given ownership in formerly state-run industries. You blink. Ownership? You didn't own your toothbrush most of your life. Now they want to give you a piece of an oil company? You take the voucher anyway. Everyone does. It sits in your drawer, curling at the edges, a relic of good intentions maybe, or maybe a scam, like Galena says. You miss the silence of old times. The lies were exhausting, but they were stable. Now the truth is loud and chaotic and hungry. They call this the wild 90s. It fits. You hear stories of billionaires rising overnight, of former factory directors suddenly driving Mercedes, of vodka being traded like currency. Once, your neighbor traded a vacuum cleaner for a sack of flour. True story. Everything becomes currency now. Booze, batteries, even imported chocolate bars. You start buying soap in bulk. You don't know why. It just feels safe, clean. There's a word people start using more. Mafia. Not the Hollywood kind. No tuxedos or horse heads, just tracksuits, gold chains, and cold eyes. Protection rackets appear where factory security guards used to stand. You see new faces on the street, slick, loud, armed. They park expensive cars near crumbling apartments. Their windows are tinted. Their laughter is too sharp. You learn to look away. Sergei learns faster. Schools stop handing out free lunches. The teacher apologizes with watery eyes as she hands him an empty schedule instead of soup. You start growing potatoes in your cousin's yard. Galena raises rabbits on her balcony. Survival becomes entrepreneurial. And yet, amid the madness, there are glimpses of something else, something real. You attend your first religious service in decades, not because you're devout, more out of curiosity. The church smells like wax and old stone. There's incense and singing. You forgot how beautiful voices can be when they're not reciting party lines. The priest blesses the congregation. You don't know what to do with your hands, but you stand quietly. It feels peaceful. TV changes too. Suddenly, American sitcoms appear. You don't understand the jokes. The laugh tracks feel creepy, but the people smile, hug, solve problems in 22 minutes. You don't trust it. But Sergei laughs, and that's enough. Newspapers are full of ads now. Private lessons, English tutoring, even fortune tellers. Galena pays 150 rubles to hear she'll live past 70. Wealth becomes the new ideology. The rich are envied, not arrested. Capitalism creeps in, not through slogans, but through sneakers, brands, fast food. You see your first McDonald's. The line stretches around the block. Some people cry while eating their first Big Mac. You don't get it. Then again, you never liked pickled herring much either. Your job, gone. The factory closes. You get a notice. Not economically viable under the new structure, which is a fancy way of saying you're on your own. You sew things at home now. Take in mending. Sell sweaters at a street stall. Once, you trade a scarf for aspirin. And still, you endure. Because What else is there? You adapt, slowly, not out of hope, but out of habit. The hardest part isn't the hunger or the cold or the fear. It's the loss of meaning. Before, everything was for the future of communism, for the glory of the state. Now, it's for rent, for sugar, for not getting scammed by a teenager selling Western jeans stitched together with dental floss. But you find small anchors. Your cat purring at the foot of your bed. A cup of real coffee smuggled from Poland. Sergei, now taller than you, handing you his first paycheck from a computer repair job. It's not much, but it's something. You smile. And that smile is a kind of quiet rebellion. One day, you walk past a mirror and hardly recognize the person staring back. The same eyes, yes, but everything else is different, thinner, wiser, tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that lives in your bones. Outside, a new billboard goes up. It's glossy, Western style. A woman in sunglasses holds a soda can and smiles like she owns the world. In English it says, "Taste the future." You laugh, a dry, bitter kind of laugh. Your future tasted like cabbage and state-approved sausage for most of your life. Now, it tastes like uncertainty and generic brand ketchup. But still, there's something in the air. Not exactly hope, something smaller. Possibility. Sergei talks about starting a business. He wants to build websites. You don't really understand what that means, but you nod. He's excited. That's enough. He shows you a used computer. Big, beige, clunky. Costs more than your pension, but he saved up. This is the future, he says, his eyes glowing. You believe him, sort of. Mostly, you're just glad he has a future. You go to the post office and see a long line. Not for stamps, for visas. People want out. Canada, Germany, Israel, America. Some leave and never write back. Others send letters filled with dollar bills and photos of smiling families in front of clean, suburban houses. You wonder if they miss the snow here, the noise, the strange comfort of shared struggle. Or maybe they don't. You start writing a diary, just a few lines every night, not for history books, for yourself, to remember who you were before the world changed and who you're slowly becoming. You don't write about politics anymore. You write about the tomatoes finally sprouting on the balcony, about the woman at the market who overcharged you, then chased you down to give back 2 rubles, about the way the light hits the cracked walls at sunset, turning them gold for just a moment. The ruble crashes again, then stabilizes, then crashes harder. You stop keeping track. Instead, you count other things. Loaves baked, mended socks, books finished, phone calls with Galena that last exactly 7 minutes because long distance is still expensive. You keep going. The city changes. New buildings rise like teeth, glass and steel instead of gray concrete. Nightclubs thump bass until 3 a.m., where old factories used to churn out rubber boots. You don't like the noise. But Sergei says it's freedom. You're not sure that's the right word, but you're glad someone's using it. One morning, you wake up and realize something strange. You're no longer waiting for the old world to come back. You miss it, yes. Its routines, its illusions, its certainty. But you're no longer clinging to it. You're moving through a new country now, one without maps, without instructions. You fold laundry. You read a book by a banned author, formerly banned. You drink your tea black because sugar is still too expensive. And you smile when Sergei jokes in English. Because this messy, chaotic, unpredictable life is yours. And after all you've lost, after all you've endured, that ownership, that quiet, stubborn presence is worth something. No parades, no medals, just survival. And that, in the end, is a kind of victory. You press your hand against the glass of the bus window and watch your reflection blur into the city. A new city, layered over the bones of the old one. Billboards now glow with brands you never thought you'd see. Nike, McDonald's, Samsung. The Cyrillic alphabet wrestles with Latin letters on shop signs. The corner store, once run by that grumpy old man with the accordion, it's now a video rental shop. You have no idea what half the movies are, but the colors on the covers are hypnotic. The bus jerks. A jingle plays on the radio, something upbeat and annoyingly catchy. The driver wears sunglasses inside, and you almost laugh. This is what modernity smells like. Burnt gasoline, melting plastic, and French fries from the kiosk across the street. You're on your way to visit Galina. She's not doing well. Her apartment is colder than you remember. Not temperature, atmosphere. The wallpaper's still peeling, and the chandelier hangs slightly crooked. But there's something missing. It takes you a while to realize. The fire. The old woman who once waved her cane at party officials now stares blankly at daytime television, nodding off between commercials. You sit beside her, offering chocolates. She eats them slowly, carefully, as though they might vanish. "You remember the May Day parades?" she asks suddenly. Her voice is thin, distant. You nod. She smiles, but it's the kind of smile that breaks you. "I miss the marching," she whispers. "We believed in something." You don't reply, not because you disagree, but because she's right. There was power in belief, even false belief. There was solidarity in illusion. And now, in its absence, people float untethered, unsure. Later, you walk home past a nightclub where teens in neon dance like it's the end of the world. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's the beginning of one. A boy skateboards past you, nearly knocking over an elderly man. The old man yells. The boy laughs. You just watch. Change is no longer coming. It's here. You remember when vodka was cheap and everywhere? Now, it's expensive and everywhere. Imported bottles with English labels. Russian-made now competes with Western quality. You can't decide whether that's insulting or hilarious. You stop by the park. The benches are new, but the trees are the same ones you climbed as a child. You run your hand along one, feeling the rough bark under your fingertips. They've survived, so have you. At the library, now rebranded as a learning hub, you pick up a book on Soviet photography. You flip through images of a time not so long ago. Girls jumping rope in uniforms, men welding under giant banners, couples kissing at train stations. Everyone looks so certain. Historians still argue whether the Soviet experiment was doomed from the start, or if it could have evolved into something sustainable, something kinder. But in these photos, nobody looks concerned with theory. They look alive, present. You miss that, even as you enjoy your first taste of actual, real coffee from a corner cafe with Wi-Fi and indie music. You sip slowly. It's bitter, overpriced, and delicious. A woman next to you works on a laptop. Her fingers move fast, like she's typing an entire future. Maybe she is. You think about what to write in your diary tonight. Something about the way the morning light caught Galina's silver hair, Or the headline on the newspaper, "Ruble stabilizes again," sort of. Or maybe nothing. Maybe tonight you won't write anything at all. Maybe you'll just listen to the quiet. Because even that has changed. It used to be heavy. Now, it feels a little bit like peace. Not joy, not quite, but peace. A slow, hard-won peace. The kind that comes when you stop waiting for the world to return to how it was and start noticing how beautiful it is, even now, even here. The scent of wet concrete fills your nose as you step out into the courtyard. It rained last night. Not one of those cinematic thunderstorms, just a slow, disinterested drizzle. The kind that makes everything seem quieter, more thoughtful. You take a deep breath, and for a second, the air almost smells like childhood. Almost. You walk past the playground. The paint on the metal slide is newer, brighter, less likely to leave burns or rust on your skin. But there's something eerie about it. It's too clean, too carefully designed. A far cry from the crude wooden structures and makeshift swings you used to risk your life on. Remember when Kolya broke his arm on the seesaw and still came to school the next day just to prove he was tough? The kids now play different games. Some stare into glowing screens. Others speak a hybrid of Russian and English, words mashed together like strange poetry. "Class no, bro!" a boy shouts, skateboarding by. You smile, though you're not quite sure if you're amused or mourning something. It's the 2000s now, or so they say. You still find yourself hesitating when writing the date. Still scribble the 1 before realizing it's been replaced by a 2. It feels like time got ahead of you while you were looking the other way. You visit your old school, now renamed and privatized. There's a security camera over the gate and a receptionist who asks for ID. The hallways look smaller. The teachers look younger. Or maybe you've just aged into someone who says things like that. Your former classroom is now a smart lab. Gone are the dusty maps of the USSR, replaced by digital projectors and posters about innovation and startups. You spot a group of kids building a drone. You try to imagine the principal from your time approving something that flies without wires. Not a chance. And yet, here we are. You walk to the corner market. It used to be a dreary little store with 2 choices for everything, this or nothing. Now it's a supermarket. And honestly, it's overwhelming. Cereal boxes shout in bright English, Polish, and German. Cookies you've never heard of promise to change your snack game. You're not even sure what that means, but somehow it makes you want to buy 3. Historians still argue whether the rapid westernization in post-Soviet countries was a necessary liberation or a cultural erasure. Some call it economic freedom. Others call it capitalist colonization. You mostly call it weird. You reach for a jar of pickles and freeze. The label says, "Authentic Soviet Recipe." You laugh out loud right there in aisle 4. How does one package a memory? How do you sell nostalgia with a barcode? But clearly, someone figured it out. You leave with your pickles, some overpriced chocolate, and a pack of gum with a koala on it. Capitalism is nothing if not eclectic. At home, your neighbor's son is blasting American rap from his balcony. His grandmother leans out from below and yells at him in a dialect you don't recognize. It's beautiful, actually, a symphony of generations colliding in open air. You sit by your window with a notebook, not to write anything deep, just to hold a pen again, to remember the shape of your own thoughts. You scribble a few words, then cross them out. Later, You flip through channels. There's a reality show about millionaires buying yachts, a documentary on gulags, and a sitcom set in 1985 where everyone laughs at jokes about bread lines and black market jeans. You pause, watch, listen to the laughter. It's strange how distance can turn tragedy into punchlines. Galena would hate this, or maybe she'd laugh too. That's the thing. Nobody ever really knew what she'd do next. That was part of her magic. You go to bed and stare at the ceiling. You remember the dripping faucet in your childhood kitchen, the hum of the old refrigerator, the way your mother stirred tea for what felt like hours. You don't miss everything, just some things. You close your eyes. The city hums outside, a mixture of engines, late-night laughter, and a street musician playing something haunting on a violin. Maybe tomorrow you'll go visit the museum they built in the old party headquarters. Or maybe you'll stay in bed and watch cartoons from the 70s. Either way, it'll be your choice. And that, for all its awkwardness and ambiguity, is something you never had before. The future used to be a collective destination. Now, it's a personal adventure. And maybe, just maybe, that's not such a bad thing. The light creeps through the curtains earlier these days. You squint, then reach lazily for the remote. Another morning, another chance to adjust to this version of reality where things look familiar but feel entirely different. You flick on the television. There's a commercial for a smartphone made by a company you couldn't pronounce 10 years ago. The next channel has a rerun of an old Soviet cartoon, but now it's in HD, remastered, sparkly. Somehow, that makes it feel less real. Like putting a tuxedo on a childhood friend, your phone buzzes with a news alert. Something about sanctions. Again. You swipe it away, not out of apathy, but habit. The world has grown so noisy since the quiet tyranny of certainty ended. The USSR had many flaws, but at least you always knew what wasn't allowed. Now, everything's allowed, and nothing is certain. You shuffle to the kitchen and open the fridge. Inside, imported yogurt, local sausage, and a bottle of mineral water from Georgia. Back then, these items would have been currency. You'd have bartered half a soul for that sausage. Now it's buy one, get one. Is this progress, or just a different illusion? You take a sip of coffee, not instant, not black market, but fair trade and medium roast. Somewhere along the way, your palate caught up with the rest of the world. Or maybe it gave up. You scroll through social media. A girl in Moscow posts a photo from Paris. A boy from Vladivostok is vlogging from Seoul. They look free, glamorous, effortlessly global. You wonder if they even know what it means to wait 5 years for a car or to dream of bananas like they were mythical fruit. Historians still argue whether the Soviet experience bred resilience or simply repression in disguise. Some say you were forged in iron. Others say you were trapped in it. Maybe both. Later, you walk downtown. The buildings wear new paint, but the bones are old. You pass Lenin's statue, still standing, arms outstretched like he's trying to explain something no one has the patience to hear anymore. Children play beneath his shadow, kicking a neon soccer ball and laughing in a way that feels pure. You smile, then notice one of them is wearing a NASA t-shirt. Oh, the irony. You stop by a bookstore, a real one, not digital, not click and ship. You run your fingers across the spines, memoirs of defectors, thrillers about the KGB, and cookbooks with titles like Stalin's Supper and Borscht Through the Ages. The past has become a genre, a marketplace, and yet In the corner, a tiny old woman with a shawl clutches a Soviet-era textbook. She's not buying it, just holding it, as if trying to feel something lost. Maybe memory weighs more in paper. You walk on. At the park, a street artist is painting propaganda posters, but with a twist. Instead of glorious farmers and steelworkers, he paints babushkas holding iPhones and cosmonauts eating fast food. The art is funny, sad, beautiful. You're not sure what emotion to settle on, so you choose all of them. Near the fountain, an old man sells Soviet medals. "Authentic," he calls out. "Real history, comrades." He winks. You wonder if those medals are even his, or if it matters. Once, those medals came with stories, blood, sacrifice. Now they come with price tags and cheap plastic display cases. The people who lived the stories? They're fading, or worse, being edited out. You think about that time your father told you he cried during Brezhnev's funeral, not because he loved him, but because everything felt like it might fall apart. And it did, but not how anyone expected. You stop for ice cream, yes, that same vanilla in a paper cup you used to dream about. The vendor is maybe 25, smiling and clueless. You ask her if she's ever heard of a deficit. She squints. A what? Exactly. You take your treat and walk past the river. The embankment has new benches, new paving stones, new street lights that mimic old ones in a kitschy way, but the water is the same, dark, restless, constant. You sit and let the breeze slap your face. It smells like summer and steel. You overhear a group of university students debating politics, loud, passionate, and contradictory. They quote Marx and TikTok in the same breath. You're not sure if you're impressed or exhausted. One girl says, "Capitalism is a scam." Her friend replies, "So is nostalgia." You want to say something clever, but instead you just listen. You've learned the value of silence. Back at home, you pull out the photo album, the real kind, with glue-stuck corners and fading ink. There's you in your school uniform, badge crooked, smile uncertain. Your mother holding a pot of soup like it's a trophy. Your brother with a makeshift guitar made of string and a plank. You close it gently, not out of grief, but reverence. That life wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was yours. Now, as the sky dims and the streetlights flicker on, you realize something. The Soviet Union didn't disappear. Not really. It fractured into memories, jokes, flavors, silences, and shadows. It lingered in the corners of grocery stores and behind the eyes of those who lived it. It whispered in bedtime stories and echoed in gulps of cold air. And maybe that's okay. Maybe history isn't meant to be resolved. Maybe it's meant to be carried. You turn off the lights. The hum of the city seeps in. You're still here, still adjusting, still learning how to be free in a world where nothing feels solid for long. And somehow, that's a kind of courage. You wake up to the sound of your neighbor's television, muffled through thin walls. It's playing a rerun of New Pogodi, a cartoon where a wolf chases a hare, episode after episode, never catching it. Somehow, the metaphor never gets old. You stretch, make your way to the kitchen, and flip the kettle on. Tea still hits different when it's brewed in a glass with that little metal holder. Like you're 5 again, wrapped in a quilt, your babushka crocheted with fingers tougher than your current Wi-Fi password. As you wait for the water to boil, you glance out the window. There's a line forming outside the pharmacy, not for toilet paper this time, but for a new allergy medication. Still, The sight of people queuing taps into something primal. In your bones, you know exactly how it feels to stand, wait, hope, and come away empty-handed. Muscle memory, Soviet edition. A lot has changed, but not everything. You head out. There's a chill in the air, even though the sun's out. You walk past a small church, golden dome catching the light. Under the USSR, religion was officially frowned upon, though secretly practiced in kitchens, basements, and behind firmly closed doors. Now churches are open, plentiful even, but the faith? That's more complicated. A babushka crosses herself reverently as she steps in. A group of tourists snap selfies on the steps, and a kid in a hoodie skates past without noticing either. Layers of belief, skepticism, and indifference, all living in the same square meter. You wander into a museum, the kind that's funded by some oligarch's charitable foundation. Inside, there's an exhibit called Everyday Life in the Soviet Union. You blink. Wait, that was your life. Behind the glass, ration books, school uniforms, a rubber hot water bottle, tin cans of condensed milk, red pioneer scarves. Artifacts now. But you can still smell the synthetic fabric of that scarf. You remember how it scratched your neck, how it got caught in your jacket zipper every single time. A group of teenagers is there on a field trip. One of them asks, "Did people really only have one pair of shoes?" You consider turning to them and answering, but something holds you back. It's not embarrassment, it's weight. How do you explain a whole world that operated on whispers, winks, and compromise? You walk on. In a corner, a faded banner reads, "Glory to the workers of the Soviet Union." Below it, a plaque says the factory where the banner was made now produces organic pet food for export. There's probably something poetic about that. Historians still debate whether the Soviet Union collapsed because of economic mismanagement or the inevitable decay of ideological rigidity. Most agree it was both. But very few talk about how strange it feels to live on the other side of that collapse. To be the footnote, the epilogue, the citizen of a country that technically no longer exists. You grab lunch at a cafe with exposed brick and Edison bulbs, so hip it hurts. The menu features borscht with heritage beets and pelmeni drizzled in truffle oil. Somewhere, a communist ghost is flipping tables. You order it anyway. It's actually pretty good. You overhear two guys arguing about whether the Soviet aesthetic is cool again. One says he just bought a hammer and sickle necklace online. The other counters with a story about his grandfather's time in the Gulag. Cool is relative. The aesthetic? Maybe. The reality? Not so much. Back outside, you notice the graffiti. Not angry slogans, but nostalgia. A mural of Yuri Gagarin with the words, "We were first." Someone spray-painted a smiling Brezhnev hugging a bear. Ironic. Absurd. Possibly sincere. You're not sure anymore. You take the metro home. The escalator ride down still feels like descending into a Cold War bunker. The walls are cleaner now, the ads flashier, but the sound, the screech and groan of metal and momentum, is exactly the same. You remember when these tunnels felt like safety during bomb drills. Now they're just part of the commute. Still grand, still echoing, still weirdly comforting. You get a seat. Across from you, a student with AirPods is watching TikToks. A pensioner reads Pravda, the modern version, slimmer now and less righteous. You close your eyes and just listen. Steel wheels on tracks, whispers, time bending around you. The train lurches forward. That evening, you meet an old friend. You haven't seen each other in years, but the bond is still there. He orders kvass. You order a latte. That's the country in a nutshell. You reminisce, not with rose-colored glasses, but with a shared sense of absurd survival, the power outages, the bootleg tapes, the way you used to tape over state-approved cassettes to record Western music. The time he traded a can of Finnish pineapple for a date, he never got the date, but the pineapple was worth it. You talk about your parents, how they tried to shield you, how they quietly sacrificed, how they never really adjusted to this new world where everything's fast, shiny, and unpredictable. Then the conversation dips. You both fall quiet, because beneath the jokes, there's grief, not for the regime, but for the millions of quiet, complex lives swept along by it, for the friends who left and never came back, for the relatives buried under headstones with 5 pointed stars and little else. You part ways with a hug, an awkward one, but real. At home, you open a drawer and pull out a small box. Inside, your old Komsomol badge, a cinema ticket stub from 1986, a photo of your family at a sanatorium. You run your thumb across the badge. You don't display it. You don't destroy it. You keep it. Because that's what you do with history you didn't ask for, but inherited anyway. You make space for it, not on a pedestal, not in a bonfire, but in a box that fits between what was and what is. The kettle whistles again. Another cup of tea. This time, you drink it slowly. Because some days, that's how you honor the past, by letting the future wait just a little. One night, months later, you're walking home through a light snowfall. The flakes fall in that slow, floating way that makes time feel syrupy. A dog trots past you, unfazed by the cold. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing an old guitar. The melody is half forgotten, half remembered. Like most things now, the city is quieter than usual. You stop by a kiosk, not the sleek glass kind, but the old-school metal ones, plastered with peeling stickers and scrawled phone numbers advertising math tutors and honest plumbing. The vendor sells you a pack of sunflower seeds and says, "Cold, huh?" You nod. In the pause, you see his face. He has that expression, deep, unreadable, a mix of stoicism and 1,000 invisible stories. Like he's lived through too many Februaries. Like he knows the snow will melt. But something colder always stays. Back home, you finally do it. You take out that old suitcase, the one that smells like must and state secrets. Inside, layers. A photo album, a faded party card, a ration coupon from the 80s. You begin sorting, not throwing away, not curating, just facing. Every item is a weight and a whisper. The scarf that meant you were a good Soviet child. The notebook filled with lyrics you copied from contraband music. A pin of Gagarin's face. A hospital form that simply reads, "Deficit medicine." You realize you're not mourning the Soviet Union. You're mourning your childhood inside it. Its oddities, its rituals, its dangerous comforts. And you realize something else too. That history is not just a timeline. It's a lived-in apartment with cracked tiles, a leaky faucet, and a view you somehow grew to love. And you're the one who stayed, who changed the light bulbs, who learned new words but never forgot the old ones, who knows how to stretch a ruble and how to smuggle hope through customs. You're the living footnote of a collapsed empire. You're a witness with no medal, no parade, and no ideological purity. But you remember, that has to be enough. In the morning, you head to work. The metro is crowded. A woman in a fake fur coat elbows her way in. A man in a Western suit hums a Soviet tune. A child swings from the overhead bar like it's a jungle gym. Life goes on in all its mismatched glory. And as the train rumbles forward under a city that remembers too much and forgets even more, you catch your reflection in the darkened window. You smile. It's not the smile of someone who misses the past. It's the smile of someone who knows exactly what it cost and lived anyway. And now, as the lights dim further and the hum of the fan becomes your lullaby, you feel your breath slowing, your limbs softening into the mattress. You've walked through an entire world tonight, a world of contradictions, both chilling and comforting, oppressive yet oddly intimate. The Soviet Union wasn't just red banners and cold cues. It was laughter in cramped kitchens, secrets scribbled in notebooks, and eyes that darted around before telling the truth. It was children climbing rusted tanks like jungle gyms, grandmothers scolding politicians under their breath, and radio waves full of forbidden voices. You've seen it all, from the sting of vodka to the softness of a hand-knit sweater, from the echoes in a breadline to the buzz of a crowded metro. And somewhere in all of it, you, yes, you, found the fragile humanity between the slogans and surveillance. Let it settle now. Let the crackle of the vinyl record fade. Let the snow keep falling slowly in your mind. The monuments can stay in their places for tonight, silent and heavy. The history books can rest closed. The old red flags, let them fold themselves gently into dreams. Because none of that is pressing anymore. You're warm, you're safe. You've made it through another strange and vivid bedtime story, and the past, with all its weight, doesn't need to be carried right now, just held lightly, like a memory in soft light. So close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, and let sleep take you gently back to your own story. End of script. Sweet dreams.